I should definitely be rich by now. That's a joke, but it's also kind of not a joke. And it's why I'm recording this video today. This video is about how to build wealth as a solopreneur. And the reason that I'm able to create this video for you is precisely because I am not a good example of how to do it. And I gotta say, I should definitely be rich by now. And this all came to be because in 2023, I shut down my design agency. This was a business that I ran for over a decade. It did really well. I had a lot of amazing clients. Basically, my course thing, how to work less, is basically created out of the experience of running that business. I got it to the point where I was making $500,000 a year, only had to work 10, 15 hours a week. It was pretty sweet. Anyway, when I shut down that agency in 2023, I actually went back and I did the math. And what I found out was a little bit surprising. I found out that over that decade, I made over $4 million. And what was more surprising is I essentially had nothing to show for it. See, I had a lot of fun. I balled out. I definitely bought a lot of stuff, which I still have. But I spent most of what I made. And when they talk about lifestyle creep, it's a real thing, right? There's always one level up. And yeah, you can always figure out ways to spend your money. So for example, for me, during that time period, I had a new Audi every 3 years leased, a private chef, which by the way, if you live in America, it's not as expensive as it sounds. I'm not trying to turn this into a how to hire a private chef video, but the company that I worked with was extremely affordable. If you're making 6 figures, you can afford a private chef. Anyway, that's not going to get you to the path of financial independence. But anyway, I would travel every year internationally, 2 to 3 trips a year. But don't get me wrong, this video isn't a freaking sob story about some rich guy who could have been richer. Okay. There's actual meat here. And I didn't run my life into the ground and run up credit card debt and not have any money. At the end of the time period in 2023, where I had this realization, I had zero debt, a couple $100,000 in retirement in cash. So it's not like I was terrible, but when I look back on it, that was just 4% of what I earned. And understanding that and reflecting back on it, probably my biggest regret from that decade was not focusing on building wealth sooner. I had this incredible business that generated a ton of cash flow, and I just treated it like money that I could just spend, right? Yeah, that's why I'm recording this video today, to show you what I did, what I learned, and what I'm doing differently now, so that hopefully you can skip the line and start where I'm starting today. Because if at 23 or whatever, I had started implementing some of this stuff that I know now, I would be on the path to financial independence, which would be sweet. But that's life, right? So why didn't I just save more? Dude, it's really easy to just be like, oh, well, Rich is stupid. He just didn't save enough money. Yeah, well, I'll tell you the reason. And maybe it might help you to understand why maybe you're not quite where you want to be financially right now as well. Okay, so there's this thing called invisible money scripts. And we all have stories that we tell ourselves about money. These are these scripts that run in the back of our head. And for me, this is my story. So from the age of 16 to 21, I was addicted to drugs, hardcore, basically ruined my entire life. If the world was fair and the odds played out, as they should, right? Right now, I would probably be dead or in jail. But I'm very lucky that at 21, I got clean. I entered recovery. I've been in clean since then. I'm 35 now, so that's 14 years. And by the time I entered recovery, this had kind of informed the way I thought about the world. And, 5 years of active addiction, you start to have these beliefs. And one of the beliefs that I had created was this idea that long-term planning wasn't necessary when life wasn't guaranteed. And that was a story that I told myself, and it became my subconscious operating system, which led me to always feel like I could kick the can on saving and investing and building wealth. Because, oh, well, what if, I'm dead next year or whatever. And like, this wasn't rational. Like, I wasn't planning to go get addicted to drugs again, but you just like build these invisible scripts. And the best book about this topic, and great podcast too, it's called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. There are two books on money that I'll recommend in this video if you want to check them out. This is one of them. It's called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. It's by Ramit Sethi. And this is his idea, this idea of invisible money scripts. And these are these unconscious beliefs that kind of silently govern our actions around money. And if you ever wonder like why everyone seems like they act like idiots when it comes to money, it's because of this, right? Everyone's behaving very rationally inside their own brain. And when we're looking at them from the external, and it's like, oh, dude, like, why did you gamble your whole paycheck at the casino? Like, they have internal logic that makes perfect sense as to why that seems like a good idea. Externally, we look at it and be like, okay, well, that's stupid. But the bottom line is like, these scripts exist and they govern everyone's actions with money. So I'll give you some examples of money scripts, and maybe some of these resonate with you. Okay. I'm not good with money. Ooh, this is a good one. This isn't on the list, but I just thought of it. I'm not good at math. I don't like spreadsheets. Budgeting means depriving myself. Investing is only for the rich. Money is the root of all evil. I'll never be rich. It's better to enjoy life now than worry about the future. Well, that sounds like someone I know. So we all make financial decisions on a daily basis based around these stories we have about money. And if you aren't understanding why you behave the way you do, it's going to be really difficult to change your behaviors. So I always feel like awareness is the first step. It's really hard to change something that we don't know exists, right? So you can check out I Will Teach You to Be Rich. It's awesome. In the book, he suggests 3 things, okay? So he suggests self-reflection. And that means starting with some of these scripts, and there's like a bunch of scripts that you can find online if you just Google like money scripts or something, or type it into ChatGPT, have them generate like 50, right? And then start to see which ones resonate with you. And then the question that you need to ask yourself is, okay, these resonate with me. Why do they resonate with me? And where did that come from? Right? I kind of trace the root a little bit of some of my like financial decision making to the fact that like, I was in an active addiction for 5 years, basically in my like formative years of life. So it's easy to see how that connection would be made. But maybe you might have heard from your parents, oh, money is the root of all evil, or your church or something like that. Or, maybe someone told you you're bad at math, your teacher when you're growing up. And as a result, you're like, well, I'm just never going to like keep track of my money. So you got to find their origins. And once you're clear on the origins, then you can start the work, right? So one of the ways that Ramit suggests you do that is reframing. And this is essentially reprogramming your mind or replacing these scripts that are running in your brain with more empowering narratives. So something like transforming I'm bad with money into I'm learning to manage my finances effectively, right? That feels better, right? And then after that, he suggests setting personal money rules. And dude's got a whole book on it. It's freaking awesome. If you're looking for a place to start on the personal finance side of things, mindset, that's one of the good ones, okay? So creating these guidelines that align with our values and financial goals. And Ramit calls this like living your rich life. He's got a Netflix show too, by the way. Anyway, this isn't supposed to be an ad for Ramit's stuff, but it was helpful for me. So anyway, the reason I'm creating this video is not to give you some sob story about a rich guy who could have been richer. It's basically documenting, like when I sat down to write this, I didn't even expect to write it and for it to come out the way. Like I knew I want to talk about building wealth, but I didn't expect it to end up here. So in a lot of ways, this is just like a letter to myself. And there's a quote that I love, which is, "We teach what we most need to learn." So when I put out these videos, they're just as much for me as they are for you. And yeah, when I look back on that decade, and I had this realization in 2023, where, you know, a decade of running a business and nothing to show for it. And it's fine, but I'm doing things differently this time. So I'll talk a bit at the end of the video about what specifically I'm doing this time. But first, we got to talk about how to get there, what are the steps, and what mistakes you may be making. So let's talk about this. All right, cash flow is awesome. I love profit first solopreneur businesses. It's the only type of business that I've really ever run. My agency was like optimized for profit, optimized for free time, high leverage, like really, really impactful work, but really high price. And then the business that I run now is very similar. Okay. So I've been running these businesses for like basically, my agency started in 2012. It's 2025, 13 years, over a decade. And I just love these businesses for a variety of reasons. It's a great way to make a ton of cash, still have a great lifestyle. Like I said, I built this design agency, did $500,000 a year in profit. And at its peak, when it was like cooking, I only had to work like 10, 15 hours running it. Business I have now, education and consulting, same thing, $500,000 a year last year. And yeah, like my clients often run their businesses this way, and people are doing anywhere from 5 to 50K every month in profit running their business this way. This isn't an ad, okay? I am just setting the stage here because there's actually a huge problem with approaching your business in this way, okay? So focusing on optimizing for profit and lifestyle is great because you get a lot of profit and a great lifestyle, but there's a huge downside, okay? So anyway, here's the problem with the business. It's not going to make you rich. It might make you have a great life and have a great lifestyle. And probably it's more, being a solopreneur won't make you wealthy, okay? Because there's a difference between those two terms. So when I start working with a new client, one of the things that I often ask them, and this is something that like I always feel like I need to get clear with people, is, okay, so you're here, you want to get to some new point in the future. You've got this vehicle. Do you want to build a business that you can sell somewhere down the line? Or do you want to build a business that generates cash flow? And all the stuff that I was talking about before, that's a cash flow business, okay? That it throws off profit that you put into your bank account every month, okay? 9 times out of 10, I would probably say 10 times out of 10. My clients say, well, ideally both, right? Like, so they want to like pull all the cash out of their business and also somehow magically have some entity that has like asset value later on. And this is a huge, huge distinction that most people don't understand. Everyone thinks like, oh, my magical exit strategy someday in the future is that I will sell my business, okay? And guess what? Most of these businesses aren't sellable, and that's fine. That's totally cool. But you need to understand that like optimizing a business for profit is not the same strategy as optimizing your business for asset value or for sale. Okay. So building an asset, like the most common, this is an asset type of business, is like a startup, like a SaaS startup or something like that, where you bring on investment in order to grow this thing. And the idea is like you just make it as freaking huge as possible so that someday you can just sell it to someone and then you get a huge check at the end and then you're gone. Okay. So yeah, building an asset means you're focused on revenue, note, not profit, growth, and scale. And the optimal strategy is to reinvest every dollar, because your dollars are resources, right? Like they represent energy, represent reinvesting every dollar back into the business to grow it. Okay. So that means like taking the smallest salary possible, working as much as you freaking can, because your goal is to build this thing that's to be as big as possible and then sold someday. Okay. People don't understand that. Optimizing for profit is completely different. It's basically what I do. It's what I teach people. Like, I don't really have experience building assets to sell. I know a bit about it because I talked with people about it, but like, Most of my clients want to like throw off a lot of profit every month into their bank account. So optimizing for profit means focusing on profit, cash flow, and minimizing hours worked, focusing on the highest leverage tasks. So the stuff that you're doing like really moves the needle. And yeah, basically like your goal is to pull every dollar out of the business. And when you invest dollars back into the business, it's to get a better return on your time, right? So that you're spending money to buy back your time. Okay. And here's the deal. If you're building a business that's optimized for profit, you're not building an asset. Okay. And I'm going to tell you in a second that assets equal wealth. Okay. So check it out. Like I said, solopreneur businesses are not assets. Okay. Even if you're only working 10 hours a week, like you're me and my agency, you're still working 10 hours a week. My agency at the end of the road was not a sellable asset. Okay. Like, sure, I could have stripped it for parts and figured out how to get some money from it. Yeah, I could have. But would the juice have been worth the squeeze? No. Would I have gotten a multiple on EBITDA or whatever? Like, no. It's not an asset. And guess what? The whole thing falls apart when I get out of it, right? So once this founder, the solopreneur, is removed from the business, eventually it stops, okay? So even if you're working 10 hours a week, you're working those 10 hours. And like you are the nucleus of the business and everything else spins around you, right? And once you remove yourself from that business, the money stops, okay? People get this confused and they think they have passive income because the money doesn't stop the second you stop working because you have built up momentum. You have built up compounding. Like if you have a course business or something and like, yeah, like if you go on vacation for a couple months, you'll probably still sell some courses. But eventually it will because like you are the leverage in the business. The reason that you're able to throw off profit and throw off cash is because the leverage is you in the business. And you are actively making a decision to trade asset value in the decisions that you would need to make an asset in order to optimize for cash flow and profit in the short term, which is great. I love it. I'm a huge proponent of it. Okay. But like there are downsides to this and most people just don't get this. Okay. So here's the lesson. Here's the hack. You can have cash flow, you can have profit, but you're still missing something. Wealth creation. What is wealth creation about? Well, it's about creating freedom and optionality, in my opinion. And someday in the future, you may want to have some options. You may want to stop working, like take an extended sabbatical, retire, do something completely different, go become a monk. Like, I don't know, maybe that's not a good example. Go play golf for a year. Like, I don't know. And at the end of the day, you would like to have something to show for your hard work besides memories and good vibes. And in 2025, with inflation, lifestyle creep, high living costs, freaking eggs, like, you know, it's easy to feel like that cash flow is never enough. But here's the deal. If you want to stop worrying about money, stop working, right? And finally feel safe and secure, this is the hack. Okay. This is the secret. This is the like TLDR of this entire video. It's not super complicated, but most people don't do it. You must turn your cash flow into assets. Okay. So when that cash flow comes out of your business every month because you're optimized for profit and you're making a ton of money and it's all gravy, you have to take some of that and it needs to go into assets because otherwise you will be like rich in 2023, $4 million generated, not a ton to show for it. Not nothing, but not a ton. Not wealth, right? So here's how to do it. And I've walked clients through this path. A lot of this was inspired by a conversation that I had with a client recently. And these are the steps, okay? Here's how we do it. So if you don't have a plan, like, listen, it's not going to happen. If you want to build wealth, you need a strategy. And this is a pretty good one. Generally speaking, I think this is a simple path where you can still enjoy the journey and then set up future you for success. All right. Step one is you must get out of debt. Okay. Wealth will elude you forever if you are in the red. Okay. Before anything else, like baseline. Okay. This is personal finance 101. Like if you grab, I will teach you to be rich. You grab freaking, what's that guy's name? I keep wanting to say Jim Cramer, but it's definitely not Jim Cramer. Oh, Dave Ramsey, like any of the finance guru people, right? Like no one is like, you should keep a freaking six-figure, five-figure balance on your credit cards at 29% APR. Get the bad debt. It's got to go. Okay. So if you have bad debt, needs to go before anything else. This needs to happen. Okay. So that means credit cards, high interest loans, etc., paid down to zero as fast as humanly possible. If you have good debt, like a mortgage, that's fine. High mortgage rates are a little weird right now, but we're going to like blanket rule, generally speaking, good debt, good, bad debt, like 29% APR, not good. Okay. So before you do anything else, we need to get out of debt because we're not going to be able to make any of the other decisions that we want to make until that's solved. Okay. Like there are a million different ways that you can figure out how to do this. I'm not the person to talk about. Go into ChatGPT, type in all your finances, maybe on private mode, and say, give me a plan to pay off my credit card debt. It'll help you. Okay. This is just like personal finance 101 that's been covered in a lot of places. So I'm not going to spend our time on it. Okay. So once you're out of debt, let's assume we've done that. The next phase is what I call getting some runway. And there is a big strategic and psychological reason why it makes sense to get runway. And when I say runway, what I mean by runway is it's basically cash that represents 6 to 12 months of your like minimum viable expenses in life. So not like your ballin' lifestyle or anything like that, but everything like pay the mortgage, keep the lights on, keep the kiddies fed, like, I don't know, what else? Groceries, like all of your minimum viable expenses. So you want to have 6 to 12 months of cash runway. And there's a big psychological reason for this. And it actually affects your ability to like do a lot of other leverage stuff. Runway tends to create a feeling of safety. And having worked with a lot of clients, sometimes what I see is that if there's not a ton of runway, you'll focus on making these like fear-based short-term cash flow decisions and completely miss the boat on much more leveraged long-term decisions that will benefit you more. So it might be something like, okay, it's like kind of like living to paycheck to paycheck. So instead of being like, I'm going to focus on getting a retainer for $60K a year, every month, because you need to like, you don't have enough runway, you take on 2 to 3 like $2,000 mini projects. And like that's enough to keep the lights on. It's enough to keep the party going, but it never gives you that big leverage. Okay. So if you don't know how to calculate runway, here's the formula. I think I got this from, what was this book called? I think it's called The Business of Expertise. Don't quote me on it. Anyway, here's a simple formula. So it is cash plus receivables plus pipeline divided by your monthly burn rate. And that's going to give you X amount of months. Okay. So take a second, pause the video, get out a pen and paper or whatever. If you don't know your runway, you don't know your burn rate, like you need to know your numbers. Okay. So cash basically means what's in your checking and your savings account. So all the liquid cash that you have available, maybe also like things like crypto or something. I don't know. Like everything, finance is getting weird, but things that are like you can liquidate easily. So like your retirement account wouldn't be an example of that, but like if you had easily liquidatable assets, that would be a cash equivalent. Okay. Anyway, let's not overcomplicate it. So receivables are going to be in your business. Projects billed, but not yet paid. So you sent out an invoice, you haven't been paid yet, or projects you finished, not sent out an invoice. Okay. Accounts receivable. That's what that's called. Okay. And pipeline is going to be projects that are 80% certain to close. So those projects that you're like, yeah, like unless something really terrible happens, like we have a verbal agreement for like a 10 grand project or whatever, you're going to include that. So you're going to add up all your cash and cash equivalents, all your accounts receivables, and your pipeline. That's going to give you a number. And that's basically all the liquid assets that you have access to. That doesn't mean that's everything, right? We're not calculating our net worth here. We're calculating our runway. And then you're going to divide that by your burn rate. Okay, so your burn rate is going to be whatever monthly business expenses you have. If you're a solopreneur, they should be pretty low. Like you probably have maybe a VA, maybe some like freelancers that you pay, and some software. Like that's average business expense. Shouldn't be a ton. Like maybe you rent office space. I don't know. Then your personal expenses, which is everything I was talking about, like the minimum viable personal expenses, like rent, electricity, internet, food, heat, water, bills, etc. Okay, take all that up, divide it by the burn rate, you'll get an X amount of months. Okay, so like aim for 6, ideally all the way up to 12. Everyone has different like risk tolerances for how hard they want to go there. But having some runway is going to allow you to think much more expansively about the wealth creation process and about your business. Okay, and if you're sitting there being like, dude, I don't have any money. How the hell am I going to get more runway? I'm glad you asked. Okay, well, the third step, didn't say this was going to be easy, is you need to make more money. Okay, this is a video about creating wealth. Like, there's no hack to creating wealth that doesn't involve making money. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit here. Like, we're not going down the rabbit hole. There's other videos that you can watch from me about making money. But the bottom line is like, no one's going to get rich saving your way to wealth. Okay, you can only cut your expenses down to 0. So I'm not going to say the goal is to spend as little as possible on expenses and put everything into some kind of like index fund or whatever. Like, it's just not a leverage path to wealth. Like, we have these businesses so that we can create profit and use that profit for stuff. So rather than switching up the order here, right, and saying step 3 is spend less than you make, I want to be really clear that like you will not save your way to wealth. Okay, we need to be thinking about generating more money. Okay, so you can only cut your expenses to 0. Increasing profit, on the other hand, has infinite upside, right? You can make an infinite amount of money, okay, but you can only cut down to 0. So to increase your profit, the goal is to focus on scaling your business in one of 2 leverage paths. Okay, if you have a solopreneur business, after you hit 100K a year, okay, first hit 100K a year. If you don't know how to do that, I'll tell you more about at the end. But if you're at 100K a year and you're like, okay, I'm trying to get serious about wealth creation, you need to follow one of these 2 paths. Path 1 is an expert business. Okay, an expert business is where you're scaling through price. So you're continuing to raise your prices over and over and over again and selling expensive stuff, services, consulting, etc., leveling up your prices, leveling up your expertise, leveling up your clients. Other side of the coin, flipping it, much more doable in 2025 than ever, which is essentially a marketing business. And it's the complete opposite, right? You're growing your business by marketing. Most people do that through social media or creating content and just scaling with volume. So the things that you sell are going to be things that don't require you to be involved in fulfillment at all. Things like courses or software or something like that. Okay, so the idea is that you have products and you have to make your products good, but you're not involved in fulfillment. So like here in the expert business, like, yeah, you're working with clients, like you're doing some element of either done for you, high level consulting, and getting paid a ton of money. Okay, marketing, all of your time should be spent improving your product and creating stuff that brings in more customers. Okay, the problem that people have is they try to go and thread the needle and go in the middle. They want to be involved in fulfillment, heavily marketing, and as a result, they don't do anything, right? And like, you need to be on the edges in order to get the most leverage. And I don't know, you're not gonna be able to click a link here, but I have a video. I'll link it like below or something. It's called 10 shifts from 100K to 500K as a solopreneur. So if you want to learn more about how to like apply these strategies, just watch that. Okay. This isn't a video about making more money. So let's assume that you know how to make money or that you're in the process of trying to figure it out. Okay. So the goal is we're going to make more money. And that is the long-term picture so that we can build wealth. Alrighty. Now the non-fun part. And this is Rich's lesson. Spend less than you make. Okay. Warren Buffett said it pretty darn well, as he tends to do. It's not about how much money you make, but how much money you keep, how hard it works for you, and how many generations you keep it for. And Warren is right. Couldn't have said it any better myself, but it doesn't feel great. Sometimes it sucks, you know? But the point is, if we level up and we make more money, so let's say you're making 10K a month.
You start getting serious about making more money. You take the expert business path. You're making 20K a month. So easy to just spend that extra 10K. Okay. And like, I'm not a saint. I know that this is difficult because that's why we're all watching this video or I'm speaking it. But making more money is pointless if you spend it all. And like, one of the things that you can do is think about like, okay, am I aware of how much I'm spending? Do I have a budget? Do I track my income? I Will Teach You to Be Rich covers a lot of this stuff. I'm not going to be your coach on this, okay? But you want to audit your household and business expenses and build out some headroom, right? So that you actually have a tangible amount of money that you're putting towards wealth creation. And you're basically going to commit a percentage of that income to invest in assets. And the goal of all of this is to have this profitable business, throws off cash every month, and take a certain percentage of it, ideally as much as you can, based on your risk tolerance, and turn it into assets. Okay. And I want to be really clear. This is not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. Okay. I'm not recommending securities. I'm not recommending anything here. Talk to your freaking CPA. That's not what's happening here. But the goal here and the whole point of this video, if you want to build wealth as a solopreneur, you've got this business that makes cash and cash comes in, and you will wake up 20 years from now, and if you don't invest it into assets, you will have nothing to show for it. Okay. And the only real way to create passive income is to own assets. All right. Here are some ideas, not financial advice. Retirement accounts. I think it's a pretty good idea, depending on what country you live in, to take advantage of any tax benefits that come from having retirement accounts. Okay. In the United States, you can have some tax write-off benefits. So talk to your accountant. If you don't have one, freaking get one. Max that out. Like, anything where you can get leverage on the tax side of things is literally just free money. Okay. So like baseline, like when we're talking about like basic wealth hygiene, no like credit card debt, max out your retirement accounts, like level one, just get that dialed. Okay. Another example, stocks, right? Okay. So when we're talking about owning an asset, this is literally something that's going to work on your behalf without you needing to do anything, and will appreciate over time so that eventually it generates enough income that you don't need, if you don't want to work. Okay. So people don't realize, like, this is obvious, but kind of not. Investing in stocks literally means you own a piece of a business. Like, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. You don't have to do anything. And in exchange, you share in the company's successes. Like, that's pretty crazy. Okay. And you can go deep on this. You can pick individual stocks. I personally don't. I'm like pretty risk averse, and I'll talk about why in a second. I personally invest in a broad Vanguard index fund. Okay. It's like a target date retirement fund. People probably have stronger opinions about this than I do. Point is, I know money needs to go in there. Okay. Real estate, right? Real estate is an asset. Okay. The market has changed. Obviously, there's not like the same level of real estate arbitrage that there was like 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Interest rates are high. Things are volatile. Things are a little weird. Market has changed, but like that doesn't mean opportunities don't remain. And what I like about real estate, and there's a lot of things to not like about it, but what I do like about it is the stuff is in the real world. Okay. And as much as we want to upload our brains into, the hard drive of the internet and just become like AIs, real estate is intangible, real assets, not just numbers on a spreadsheet. Okay. So like my house, like, exists. The land that I own is actually in the world. So there's something to be said for that. Anyway, the rest. Okay. You're talking to a very risk averse person, generally speaking, and I have a reason for it, which I'll share with you momentarily. But like, yeah, all the other like high risk stuff, right? Crypto, startup investing. Like, I'm sure there's even other weirder stuff, like, investing in your brother-in-law's startup or his, bowling alley that he's starting or whatever. Like, high risk, high reward. I don't really participate in any of this stuff. The reason for that, and I thought this was smart, like being an entrepreneur is risky enough. And I see the investments that I make to build wealth as a way to offset the risk from the fact that like I really do have this business where like existentially it does not exist without me. That is the major pro and the major con of the business. But that's just me. Like your risk tolerance is different. I'm 35, you know, big picture, I have some time, right? Like I have some time, but also I'm not 21. And if you're 21, you're sitting there, you're probably like, yeah, YOLO, like who cares? So the point though is to take this cash that your business generates and turn it into assets, because that is how you build wealth. Assets equals wealth. Okay. And then the last step, and no one wants to hear this, is time needs to pass. Okay. The first step is to own assets. The second step is to wait. If I had started this at 23 instead of 33, when I had my come to Jesus moment, I'd have a lot more money. And wealth isn't built overnight. Okay. It is time that is the most important ingredient in building wealth. I'm not going to like go give you a Warren Buffett biography. But there's some crazy statistic like, I don't know, 98% of his wealth was created in the last like 10 or 15 years of his life. I'm botching the numbers, but the bottom line is like compounding is the way that you get wealthy. And the only way that compounding happens is if you are invested in some asset for a long period of time. Okay. Wealth isn't built overnight, which leads me to what am I doing? What am I thinking about? How am I approaching this? And I'll tell you, okay? Like, not financial advice, obviously, but this is what I'm doing, okay? The second book that I want to recommend if you're on your wealth creation journey is called The Psychology of Money. I feel like I spelled this wrong. There we go. The author Morgan Housel, in the book, he says, doing well with money has a little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave. And I think everything that we've covered up until this point speaks to that point. I didn't tell you anything that's rocket science in this video. Okay. Bottom line is like, you got to fix your unconscious money issues before you even do any of this stuff. And if you want different outcomes, you need to have different behaviors. So for me, I looked at the outcomes of, the first decade or so of my career. And I was like, okay, well, I probably need some different behaviors. So for me, I'm making up for lost time and I'm taking my own advice. It's not super exciting. It's not super sexy. Make more money. Yeah, that's good advice. Shocking. Okay. Spend less, invest more. So I control like $1 million in real estate, and my big earn more goal is to double my business this year, which I'm on track to do. Okay. Obviously, the more headroom that you have, the more profit that you have makes everything easier. Okay. Notice my plan wasn't, I'm going to like cut back on what do they call them? I'm going to cut back on avocado toasts and Starbucks. No. Okay. We're entrepreneurs here. Those profits are going to help pump up the runway and allow me to invest in more assets. And then I just like need to sit back and let compound interest work its magic. But like, I don't want to paint the picture that this is all freaking rainbows and jelly beans. Life keeps showing up. Okay. We were like majorly waylaid when we purchased our most recent house. Okay. Literally 3 weeks after we closed in this house, dream house, love it. It's amazing. I'm in it right now. We were hit by Hurricane Helene. If you're not aware, last fall in America, there was a really bad hurricane. I was all up in it. Okay. We were out of power and internet for an entire month. No water for almost 3 months. We had to flee the city and live somewhere else for a month. That means staying in a hotel for an entire month while paying your mortgage and stuff. We also sustained very substantial external damage that basically cost us another down payment to repair. So I don't want you to think like, oh, this is easy. Like you can't avoid this stuff. Like life shows up. Everyone gets a turn. And the goal is to stay the course to the best of your ability, even when things get hard. And I say all this to say, like, this is a plan for decades, right? This isn't like the actions take place on the day-to-day basis, but like we need to look at a long enough time horizon to think about wealth creation. Okay.
what else can I say? Wealth creation is not complicated, as you've heard, but it requires discipline and patience. And the key is to start today. I love this quote. The best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time to plant it is today. And best time to start thinking about creating wealth was 10 years ago, if your name is Rich. And the second best time is now. Okay. So every day you wait is a day you can't get back. Hopefully this is a wake-up call for some of you. You're probably on like any one of these parts of the journey. Like for some of you, maybe the biggest leverage thing is solving these invisible money scripts and getting some clarity on that. Check out I Will Teach You to Be Rich. If that's the case, maybe you're like, I need to pay off my credit card debt. Love it. Go do it. Like, Godspeed. If you're trying to like be in the part of your business where you're growing, I can help with that. Like, there's some links below. You can check it out. If you're making less than 6 figures, you probably want to check out How to Work Less. If you're making more, you can check out my other mentorship thing. Okay. Either way, I wish I had this video 10 years ago. Some of you have probably already left and will not get the lesson from this, and that's fine. But if you stayed with me through this entire thing, really like take this to mind, because these are really easy habits to create, but they require awareness. And it's something that I wish I had 10 years ago, or I had someone to like shake me a little bit and say, hey, have you thought about this? Yeah. So that's it. Here's the recap. Get out of debt, get some runway, make more money, spend less than you make, turn your profit into assets, and then let time happen. Okay. 2 books to check out: Psychology of Money, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Those are both great. All right. And on that, I'm going to leave you. I hope you found this valuable, and see you on the next one.